right, we are live. Hello, hello. I am here with Jenna Parker, who is amazing ecotherapist here locally in Chattanooga. And we are going to be just chatting today about what ecotherapy is, how, I know when I first met Jenna, I didn't even really know much about it, but I think it's really amazing and how she kind of conducts that and alongside movement and all of the things. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Jenna. And I want you to tell everybody a little bit about, yourself maybe, and then also kind of like how you got into ecotherapy. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Libby. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Jenna. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been practicing social work for the past decade. Actually started my career in West Africa, which is really cool. And it's actually kind of the inception of this unconventional approach to healing, if you will, and really inspired a lot of the things that I tried to bring back with me once I returned to the States in all of the professional and therapeutic settings I found myself in. So really excited to talk about that. But I am a Chicago native and moved to the South because it is warm and green here. And so that was also already kind of this big motivator for me being in a warmer climate, because I do have a lot of outdoor hobbies and practices that are really nourishing for me that are hard to do in the concrete jungle of Chicago. Really, as I mentioned, I started my career in Ghana, West Africa. I was working as a therapist at a residential treatment facility for men struggling with substance use disorders. And it was really neat because I found myself in an environment that was, really kind of the culture in Ghana is very different from here in the States, very relationally focused, doesn't really prioritize like punctuality or time constraints. And a lot of what we were doing as we were engaging in therapy was meeting in the beautiful courtyard of the facility. And we weren't really confined by that typical 45-50 minute session. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a way for me to bring this back with me, knowing I was going to be returning. Yeah. And so as the years kind of went on, I kept trying to find like flavors of ways that I could bring this really relationally focused and more just like natural way of engaging and healing. Found myself in a lot of more traditional roles in therapy and program development and leadership roles. And a couple of years ago, I started my private practice, Waves Wellness. Was really kind of a side hustle, so I could make some extra money. And about a little over a year ago, I actually fell into ecotherapy. I was working with someone, we were doing some grief work together, and on a significant anniversary date, we decided to meet at a really sacred park. And we never went back. We never went back into the office after that. And I was able to witness this person cross thresholds in their healing that they had kind of gotten stuck at in the office setting. And so then I started thinking like, there's something to this. And really kind of gradually transitioned my entire caseload to meeting in natural settings around Chattanooga. And then, of course, was like, well, I guess I need a little bit of training here, right? There's got to be some research and some theory and technique that really kind of backs up what I'm doing because I'm seeing it happening. And that's when I discovered ecotherapy and this whole kind of school of thought and practice and really way of being through the lens of healing.
Yeah. Wow. That is really amazing. And I don't even know, we probably have talked about it a little bit, but I don't even know if I really knew about Ghana and like that you really started there. That is incredible. And Yeah, I mean, I've traveled a good amount as people who know me know. And like there's African time and that's like a whole nother timeline. It's like, when you said that, that was really funny because it definitely is like a whole different thing. But people there are so like much more connected, I feel like, to the earth and the environment around them and communal, like you said. It's a totally different picture when you're here in the US. But it's something that I think a lot of people are really missing without even knowing that they're missing that piece. Like we need connection, and we need connection between humans, and we need connections to the earth, and like feel grounded, like literally. And so yeah, that's really amazing. You have had such like a cool path, and knowing you for a while now, but now like knowing that your kind of your whole story, and then seeing, how you've developed your business over the last year has been just such a cool thing to witness. So I'm really excited for all that you're doing. Really, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I too think it's really cool. I feel really resourced when I'm outside, and always kind of joke like I just get to walk around in the woods with people all day and hold space for their healing, and really kind of be a bridge for their relationship with their own earth body, and with all of the natural wonders and companions and allies that are all around us. So it's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Very cool. And I think for some people, maybe because it is non-traditional, and this is kind of like crossed my mind a bit over the past couple of weeks. I mean, for a long time, but like what we think of as traditional is really just like the Western versus like traditional actually is more so what we now say is non-traditional. But it's funny how it's like flip-flopped basically. But for people who maybe are like, oh, that's like kind of woo-woo-y, or they don't really understand all of it. Like I know you went through some like your trainings and all of that and certification. So how do you maybe kind of talk to people about more of the, I don't know, kind of like the science-backed, evidence-based stuff, to kind of show them that, yeah, this is like, there's like the physical evidence of it, like doing it and practicing it. But then there's also like all of these other underlying data and research to back it all up. So how do you kind of talk to people about that?
Yeah. It's such a good point, right? Because of course we do live in the Western world where an evidence-based treatment and approaches is something that I really pride myself on, because that's really kind of built into my code of ethics, and it just makes sense, right? To operate from a place of research and evidence that says that this helps.
Yes.
Often when I am breaching the topic of ecotherapy, I tend to just start by asking people what they like to do outside, right? Like, do you spend any time outside? And what do you notice about your mood, your energy, your focus, even after you sit on your front porch or go for a hike or a run, or simply like bask in the sunshine? And 100% of the time am I met with, oh, I feel great, right? Or I feel better, or I feel more resourced, or whatever it might be. And so that kind of opens the door for talking a little bit more about the fact that humans are nature, right? We are of the earth. And of course, connectedness with nature, right? It's like a coming home almost. And so, not to mention, right, there's an abundance of research that talks about the benefits of spending more time in nature, slowing down, and reconnecting with the present moment and the earth around us. Ecotherapy really is kind of this like up and coming field of healing, especially in the psychological realm of healing. But there's a lot happening around the world. I think about Japan specifically is really kind of trailblazing some practices like forest bathing through the lens of almost like being prescribed to spend time outside if you're struggling with symptoms of anxiety or depression or chronic stress. So it's really cool to see this happening where, I mean, like doctors are prescribing that you go outside in order to so yeah, there's an abundance of it. And naming that ecotherapy, I think the first conference was in 95, was when this kind of group of people came together of environmental activists and psychologists and counselors and just kind of this broad spectrum of folks who realized that something's got to give. And there is a connectedness happening here. And how do we have a seat at the table and actually start to collect and gather information that says, no, this is something that is data informed?
Yeah. It's so interesting, as I remember, and I feel like maybe we talked about this on one of our walks a while ago, but I remember listening to this podcast by Shankar Vedantam on NPR, Hidden Brain, and he was talking about how like cortisol levels, like after doing blood tests of people's cortisol levels after they have spent time in on a city vacation versus a nature vacation, significantly lowered. And then they were talking about more in the workplace, but it was even if you have the sound of nature going on, lowered cortisol levels, or plants around the office or whatever it is, or not, natural light. They kind of did this whole spectrum of testing. And that was something that was really validating to what my personal experience has been as well. Cause I, just like all those other people, would say when I go outside, I feel way better, than I do sitting inside all day. But it was cool to hear that research. And then I think I have heard a little bit about, I forgot that it was in Japan, but the forest bathing is so cool. And it's funny that we have to prescribe that. I actually was thinking about that in terms of movement a couple of weeks ago. And it was as a physical therapist, we also prescribe exercise, but a lot of times we don't have, people think of it as more of a suggestion. They don't actually take it like they would take their statin drug every day, And I was thinking about that reframe of how to, and I don't really have an answer for this, but to communicate well enough to people that what you can do through movement or going outside or these other quote unquote alternative therapies actually have so much more benefit. And if we prescribe those, it's not just willy-nilly stuff, right? We're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall. It's for a purpose and a reason and evidence-based and all of those things. And a lot of times then, a lot of times you don't then have to have the medication. I mean, some people think there's a give and take and balance with all of it, just like with health, just like with mental health. But it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I also want to name an interesting study that I read about, which was focusing more on recovery from major surgeries. And admittedly, I couldn't tell you the name of where I saw this. This is in the early days of my research at this way of healing. But it talked about how people who were recovering from surgery, who had either a window in their room that faced a natural setting, or even had a nature show playing on TV, had faster rates of recovery from the surgery than those who were either looking at an urban setting or was watching, whatever game show on TV, or didn't have any exposure to the outdoors. And so I thought that was really cool too, that, there's this physical and psychological benefit of being outside.
Yeah, definitely. It is so fascinating. And I think that it's something that maybe a lot of people, when you ask them, like you said, they would say that they feel better, but a lot of times it's not always our first thought, in the 21st century and especially in America, where it's go, 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 get your car, drive here, do this, da, da, da. So it's important, I think, to slow down and to really embrace kind of that, your surroundings and your environment, and take it in and appreciate it for all of it.
Yeah. Simply like giving yourself permission to slow down and to notice. So much of what I do and so many of the techniques that I bring into my sessions with folks is creating space to slow down and to notice, where am I feeling drawn? What is my body telling me? Or where's my body telling me that it wants to go? Really practicing like sensory awareness and noticing all of the textures and the colors and the shapes of the trees or the grass or the rocks or the waterways around us. And that in itself, there's just so much medicine that comes from slowing down versus this really fast-paced culture and life that we find ourselves in.
100%. And it's funny because like I definitely get on that. Like I was talking to somebody today and I get excited about stuff and I start talking a mile a minute and my brain is like going faster than my mouth can speak. And I'm, it's like, golden retriever, like energy. Like, oh my God.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And then I have to like really think about sometimes like I can just take a breath. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so important. Like, so when you take people outside, I know maybe not all the time, but a lot of times you're also moving, like you're hiking, you're walking, you're doing all of that kind of stuff. So I know for me, that's really cool because I know the benefits of like, I mean, and obviously you do as well, but like the benefits of movement and how that also helps like mental health. But maybe has it always been like that for you? Have you always had that connection between movement and mental health, or like, yeah, how has that kind of evolved?
Yeah. So for just like my personal practice, I've always been an athlete. I ran varsity track in high school, and movement is something that has always helped keep me stable and keep my mind steady and regulated. And so recognizing that within myself, and truthfully, a lot of what I do at Waves Wellness is informed by my own practices, right? What I've noticed, the things that have helped me as somebody who is, as much as I hate to admit it, I'm therapy resistant, despite being a therapist. And so it's been really interesting to see how I can translate that to what I'm doing professionally. And I think kind of the biggest thing that I notice with movement, or one of the bigger like pieces of it, is this idea of bilateral movement, which is the really kind of rhythmic alternating movement of our body, right? So walking is this really great and kind of staple example of bilateral movement. And what this allows us to do is so many things, but in a really simplified nutshell, it's just allowing the hemispheres of the brain to communicate more effectively with one another and to communicate more effectively with the body. So with that bilateral movement, we're able to regulate our emotions more effectively. We're able to process and relay information more effectively. We're able to rewire some of those neural pathways in our brain that happens at a faster and more efficient rate when we're bringing movement into the equation. And so, I mean, the list goes on and on. There's huge reductions in depression, anxiety symptoms, and any kind of mood symptom, really. And so I think a lot too, I work with a handful of folks that have an ADHD presentation, and sitting still in the office is really, really challenging and distracting. Yeah. And so it's really cool to see how attention and focus is, it just happens in this way that wasn't happening in an office setting. So, so many things. I could probably sit here for the next 40 minutes and talk about it.
No, that's so true. And it's like, I like inherently know a lot of those things too, because I feel like my runs or like walks or like when I'm processing so much, and like Yeah, it totally makes sense that that's my time that I like think, or I'll have ideas or whatever while I'm running, and then I'll like voice text myself because I'll have like an idea and I just process something. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense, or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's like that it's almost like a moving meditation. Well, it is a
Mhm.
moving meditation,
Yes,
walking.
it is. Yep.
And yeah, and that focus and attention is, yeah, and in touch with your like what you're feeling and everything around you as it's going
Mhm.
is, yeah, super, super important. I love that. I feel like yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Um, we were talking before this about it being cold outside, though. I mean, we're moving into winter, and I have a lot of thoughts about winter. You know, I don't like winter. Obviously, you don't like the cold either. Moved away from
Yeah.
Chicago.
Right.
But, like, when it is cold outside, and it kind of is getting dark early, and it's just kind of this like slow time of year. And I mean, I know I generally get the blues or seasonal affective disorder in January once the holidays are over. Um, but yeah, how do you kind of navigate that for your clients, for yourself, for kind of all the pieces of the puzzle that come into being more outdoors with the changing seasons?
Yeah, yeah. So I giggle because I was reflecting on this. This is my second winter being full time being outside with folks, and I remember thinking like, why does this winter feel so much harder than last winter? And I think it's because I started in the winter. And so I didn't have spring, summer, or fall to compare it to. So I thought that was, it was an interesting observation for me. But there are really a lot of things. So one of the really sweet and like clinical benefits of meeting outside, because I see folks outside rain or shine, cold, hot, snow, even. And one of the really sweet pieces of this is being able to learn how to increase our distress tolerance, right? So learning the different skills that help us navigate hard things, because it's inevitable that hard things happen in life. And so rain, cold, heat, whatever it might be, darkness, it is a really cool opportunity to talk to folks about how do you manage these things, right? How do you move through it? And in so many different ways, right? I think about like clothing. There's a Norwegian sentiment, I guess, that says there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And
Yeah.
so that is something that has stood out to me, is thinking about like dressing for the weather is very much a skill. And it helps us figure out how to navigate our distress tolerance, because cold can be really uncomfortable, especially for people in Tennessee. And so that's a big piece of it, is dressing appropriately and making sure that expectations are managed right out of the gate. And so when people come to me and we're in the early phases of working together, it's something that's really heavily focused on, is that the elements are something that we can't control, and we're going to be out there anyway. And so how do you feel about that? And how can I support you in navigating what that looks like? And what are some really effective skills that we can use? As well as just like providing some comfort items, right? So like I always have hot hands and hot toes for my clients that I offer them. And in the summertime, kind of similarly, I have these neck fans that I offer people, and I make sure I have like ice water and things that would promote comfort. But a lot of it is preparation. A lot of it is like managing expectations. And it's actually really sweet, because I think that we get to see the natural world during days and seasons that a lot of people would be more avoidant. And there's this really sweet mirroring that happens, because I mean, we know that we don't always have perfect days, and that there's a lot of tumult and chaos and stress and heavy emotions, and there's just so much that happens inside our bodies. And when we're only willing to go outside when weather is perfect, is right? Like that's not an accurate reflection of what it means to be alive. And so there's also this like really sweet opportunity to help with that like self-acceptance and esteem and worth and figuring out what it means to be alive as nature mirrors that through the weather.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. And when you were saying that, it really did make me think about like resiliency and like building resiliency. Because yeah, it's not super comfy, but my brother has said this, and I know lots of people, but he told me this as I was like, didn't want to go down a tree run skiing with him last winter. And he's like, growth happens on the edge of your comfort zone, Libby. And I'm like, so every time I think about like doing something that I really don't want to do, but I'm like, okay, am I safe doing it? Yes. Is it going to make me uncomfortable? Yes. Okay. I still can do it. Like, and I think about that a lot, especially in the winter, and yeah, building resiliency through that. And it's funny because then that made me think of another conversation I had with some clients earlier this week, actually. And I think with what I do in the fitness realm, a lot of times I've been doing it for a while. So, I don't get as sore maybe as other people do, or I don't feel like I already have it as such a habit and a routine that it's part of my lifestyle so much that I don't necessarily always think about or forget sometimes how difficult it can be to start over or to do something different or get out of your comfort zone. And also not understand the difference between like what pain and soreness is and what's good or what's bad. What is this sensation in my body? And I think that it's been interesting to me to learn how to listen to people and what they're explaining to me, and then try to tell them and teach them that what they're feeling is either an okay sensation, like a burning muscle burn or a soreness or something like that, versus what pain actually feels like. What's a signal for us to actually stop? And and so building up resiliency and just like body awareness. Kind of how I think about the parallel too, of like getting outside of your comfort zone, like doing something uncomfortable. Like what does it feel like to like almost be at failure with a rep of something? A lot of people might not understand what that feels like to do something truly difficult. And because they might not feel safe doing it or might not understand that that's an okay feeling. So I don't know. It's really interesting to think about all of those kind of parallels and putting ourselves a little bit outside of that comfort zone that we so like gladly clutch onto most of the
time. Yeah, absolutely. And those are, there's such wonderful points there. And I think too, there's even this like, it's like a confidence building too, right? I can do hard things. I can be in the midst of, I can feel uncomfortable and overcome. And it's really sweet too, because I have met a handful of people who maybe we're fearful of getting outside, because we live in this world that has removed humans from nature in so many big ways. It seems like that rift is just kind of growing wider and deeper year by year. And so I meet a lot of people who are like, I want to have a relationship with the outdoors. I want to feel comfortable and confident and like capable of keeping myself safe out there. And I don't know how to. And so I think you're also touching on this really sweet opportunity to have somebody like me or like you, if we're thinking about it from the fitness perspective, that can help be a bridge, right? Yeah. How can I help bridge this so that you can build confidence and safety and competency in this realm, so that one day I can step out of it and now you have this really sustainable and accessible like companion in your healing. And so, I think that's really a really sweet piece of it as well.
Definitely. Yeah. There are two things come to mind with that. And Like the first is those like that win basically. And a lot of times I'll tell you like, what's the win for the day or for the week, what, and that's like such a big win when you do something hard and then but you do it anyway. And it gives you that win and sense of accomplishment that I think sets people up so much more for the rest of their day or their week. And I generally in my practice will talk a lot about that, like giving yourself those wins first thing in the morning. It could be like a small little task, like making your bed. But if you made your bed in the morning, that's a win. And then you think of it as a win. You're like, I'm winning today. Talk about mindset like a lot with that. And yeah, and then the other thing I think that is also super relevant to both of us is being that bridge and then basically providing tools. Like we both are, I always tell people like I'm building you a toolbox so that you have the tools when things inevitably maybe aren't perfect because life's not perfect and something else comes up. But now now you have the knowledge that I can, I've spent 7 years of school learning plus like time and practice and all this, and I can teach you something. And I think that's the most valuable thing that we can do as providers a lot of times is actually give people and empower people with knowledge so much more than just like telling them a quick fix and then they still don't really understand why or the deeper meaning underneath all of it. So
yeah, I think of the age old saying of right, if you give a man a fish, he has food for a day, but if you teach him to fish, he has food for a lifetime. And so I think you're highlighting that really eloquently, because that's the ultimate goal is for you not to need me anymore, right? Is for you to have that toolbox totally filled up and be able to access nature, right, through the lens of ecotherapy, to access nature as a companion and as an agent for healing. And maybe we do a tune-up every now and then, right? But yeah, just providing something that is sustainable, that your therapist or your physical therapist or your nutritionist or your doctor or your chiropractor isn't always going to be available to give you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true for so many professions and professionals who are educators as well as practitioners, really. And so like when you like, I know everybody is super different, but maybe what are some of the kind of little tools that you might like put in somebody's toolbox or little tidbits of information that you could kind of like suggest to people who maybe are like curious about this? Maybe they're like, well, they're not ready to jump into therapy maybe, but they're like, oh, I should get outside more. Like maybe there's something to this. Yeah. Do you have like little tools that maybe you can suggest people?
Yes. There are, I guess two that come to front of mind that I observe to be really accessible for folks. And so the first one is breathing. Like truly and honestly, our breath is the best way for us to connect to nature, because we're connecting to our nature, right? We're connecting to this earth body that is all ours. And breath is there's so much benefit to it, including just like simple mindfulness, right? Like bringing yourself or tethering yourself to the present moment. You're kind of flipping the switch for the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and relaxed nervous system. You're also giving yourself permission to slow down through the breath. And so any kind of breath practice, even if it's just like sitting here and noticing the natural rhythm of your breath. And anytime you notice your mind start to wander, gently bringing your attention back to that steady rise and fall. So super accessible. We've always got access to the breath, right? Which is a sweet little thing. And then the other one is a little bit more like nature geared, I guess, when we think about nature in the more like traditional sense, right? Is something that I really love is a sit spot practice. And this can be like as immersive and as not as you want it to be, right? And so this is really simply spending, anywhere from 60 seconds to 60 minutes spending time with a place in nature that feels really connecting and calming for you, right? So maybe it's sitting on your front porch and using all of your senses to notice what's happening, like what color the sky is and how the wind feels on your skin and the different natural aromas that you notice. But it could also be just like looking out your office window for a minute, right? And spending intentional, mindful time just gazing out the window, right? So any intentional time spent noticing nature is also really accessible practice, right? Because I think there's this like wide range of how you can engage in this, whether it is just like, glancing out the window for 60 seconds and then returning to whatever you're doing, or, going out to your favorite park and sitting under a tree that you love. The goal, or I think like the piece of it that's really necessary, is doing it without any distractions, right? Like putting the phone away, closing the laptop, or leaving the phone behind, and giving yourself permission to just be with nature. Again, for however long, in whatever setting, through a window, or, being fully immersed.
Yeah, those are great. And I talked with Dr. Jason, another PT who I think you might have met at one of the Human Health Collectives. And he does a lot with like chronic pain, but also yoga instructor. And he talked a lot about like breath work and all of that. So super, super important. And yeah, the like expansion of the diaphragm, activating the vagus nerve and like putting us in that rest and digest is super important. And I think it's really cool that you mentioned something like those things that are so simple, and like even for the person who maybe is like, well, I can't get outside, but even just like looking at the sky, like intentionally, because I think that that's something that, and you probably hear this a lot, but people are so busy and they probably have so much more time if you look at the time we waste on our phones. But people who are genuinely, we all have busy lives, but taking that time, even just for 60 seconds to look out the window, like that's a really easy, accessible, intentional thing that you can do, which I love that. I think that that is definitely a great practice, especially for somebody who, would put themselves in that like, busy kind of hyper blah, blah, blah from thing to thing kind of personality or job or whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. It's amazing. It's amazing the gifts and the medicines that we receive just by simply noticing and connecting. So I always try to make my practices like tailor them in a way that is going to be accessible to whoever it is I'm working with, because there's such a wide range, right? I mean, we do live in Chattanooga. There's this great outdoors culture here, and so much connectedness that exists already. And life doesn't always permit it. And so how do we meet people where they're at in this journey? And of course, the goal would be to kind of expand the time spent with nature, the relationship with nature, but you got to start somewhere. So
I always like use 1% better. And I know we've talked about that as well, but I always think, okay, well, looking out the window for 60 seconds with your laptop down is better than nothing. And so that's a perfect place to start for somebody who might not be able to spend an hour outside. I think that is really great, just to be able to create that connection with the earth and everything around you and yourself as well, like you talked about with the breath.
Yeah.
And so we've talked a lot about this as well. And I'm sure your experience from Ghana also plays into this, just in the way that like our culture is different, but community has been a really big part of what I've focused on this last year, and part of, building the Human Health Collective, building this like mastermind group on Facebook, and really trying to create just more community for myself, and like genuine friendships, and all of that. And so how do you maybe see, community and connection, not only from like us to the earth and nature, but also like between people, being like, how does it impact kind of the people that you see, or your experience, I guess, personally as well?
Yeah. So community is one of my core values. I think that connectedness is really one of the things that is it just transcends all of life, right? Like we are connected, whether no matter how introverted you are or how isolated you tend to be, we're a part of this big web of life that is constantly interacting and influencing one another through these kind of reciprocal exchanges that are happening. And so, of course, humans need humans. We are social creatures. And from an evolutionary standpoint, right, that looks like survival. And of course, has really kind of like broadened and evolved as technology and humanity has evolved over time. I think about too, like there's so many like paths I feel like I could go down with this too. So I'm going to try to figure out like ways to concisely name a few of them. And so the other one that I think about here is our relationship with Earth, right? And with life, and kind of our more than human kin, if you will. Because if, we're thinking about this through the lens of ecotherapy, being in relationship with Earth rather than seeing Earth as a commodity or something for us to use, like a resource that we can take from, is really kind of like one of like the tenets of ecotherapy is how can we be in a respectful, reciprocal relationship with the natural world? A lot of this theory behind it talks about that, our Earth is really sick right now, right? There's an abundance of suffering and pain that is happening, and a lot of what we talk about in this world is that humans are also sick and suffering because we are of the earth, right? And so again, it's this like this systems approach or systems way of thinking that if one piece of the system is hurting, that hurts other pieces of the system as well. So from like kind of a theoretical ecotherapy perspective, there's a need for reciprocity and community in order for us all to survive and to be healthy and to thrive. I think a lot about Joanna Macy's work that reconnects, which I know you're going to share this resource with the group. But something that she talks about in her framework is that we can't operate in isolation. And when we do, that causes a significant amount of pain and suffering and hurt, amongst humans, amongst, more than humans, amongst all of life. And so, the idea here is that it is absolutely essential for us to be in community in order for us to move towards a more loving, life-sustaining, and green future.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that came to mind because you've talked a lot about how like we are of the earth. And if we are of the earth, that means everybody else is also of the earth. So like we are like, it's so that was like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like, of course, we have to also be connected to other humans and people because they are also of the earth, and like we are all of this earth. So it's being in community and connection with not just what we think of as like, the trees and the grass and the sky and the river, but also all of the other people who are in this space with us. And that was an interesting an interesting thought. That also reminded me. I'm a big fan of Esther Perel. I know that I think I kind of shared a little bit of that with you a couple weeks ago, but she posted something today on her Instagram. But it was a quote, something along the lines of like, in a society that is hyper individualistic, being of community is radical, or like something about community, like basically trying to create community is kind of like radical almost in society that we are hyper individualistic in the way that I think that our, at least in America, this Western way of thought where we have to claw our way to the top, and we maybe forget that we forget about how much we really need community. And I know I kind of lost sight of that for a while. And that's why when I came back to it and have been really focused on that this year, it's made such a huge difference. And I have met so many incredible people and made so many incredible, friendships and relationships with people. So yeah, and it's an intentional practice. And I think that that's something that we really do have to be intentional with, in this day and age, in this society, in this culture, because it might have used to been in maybe in more third world countries, it still is just innate. Like they have to rely on each other, because otherwise they wouldn't survive. We have lost that, so we have to have a lot more intention around it. Yeah.
I really I love the use of the word radical, because I think that's very true, and it also makes me think of something that is so inspiring to me from the work that reconnects, which is Joanna Macy talks about how coming together in community, not only to advocate and take action towards environmental activism and climate change, and taking these actions towards the healing of the earth, but also in celebrating and experiencing joy. And she names that as an act of rebellion, which I think is so cool in this, hyper individualized, like capitalist society that we find ourselves in. Is when we come together, it's kind of like we're sticking it to the man a little bit, because that is, it's essential, and it is steeped in ancient human wisdom that we need each other, and that community is how we not only survive but thrive. And so radical, rebellious, like I love to think about community that way.
I feel like we're like, I don't know, it makes me, those words also make me think of like warriors, so I'm like, warrior.
Yeah
I love it. Yeah. And so with that, it is really interesting, of course, like with the way that taking care of if we are of the earth, right, or we are of the earth, right, and then taking care of the earth, and that being part of ecotherapy, such an interesting, because it obviously goes hand in hand. But again, a lot of times we're so hyper focused on just one area, or having one set definition of what something is, and we forget maybe the other systems that are also playing a huge role in that, and how everything connects. Again, and so, are there things in Chattanooga that you know about, that you think are like good ways to kind of help maybe facilitate more of that, taking care of the earth and that sort of thing? I know there's it's a very outdoorsy group here, so.
Yeah. Wow, there are so many incredible initiatives in this community that focus on that focus on giving back to the earth. I think about just like all of the the conservation groups, and the first one that comes to mind is actually the Lula Lake Land Trust, right? This is a really sweet, preserved natural space that is focused on conservation and protection and education, so much so that the community members are only allowed to visit the land. I think they have 1 or 2 open gate days. And so I think that research, right, is so valuable. I also think about a lot of the like tree planting initiatives that have happened across the community. Of course, I think about New Terra compost, right? So compost, we have a literal service in Chattanooga that promotes composting, which is like so freaking cool that, you know, we live in a community that offers those kinds of services. I also think about some of those companies or businesses that offer like I think about the Full Circle Refillery, which is such a sweet space. If nobody knows about it, you should go down there because it is the idea is reducing single-use plastics by selling different types of products like toothpaste and lotion and soaps and laundry detergent. And you can either purchase like glass containers or you can bring your own and use that as storage. And so the list goes on, Libby. Like, I mean, Chattanooga is abundant with giving back, and I think that is really, really special and necessary.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And you should link any of those things that when this posts on Facebook, you should link it those there like underneath as well. Cause like I would be curious to look at. I didn't even really know about the Full Circle like roof. That's amazing. I mean, I try and like have tried to limit my plastic use, but I like make my own yogurt now. So it's like I have mason jars of yogurt in my fridge. But I didn't know about kind of the other products that, you know, just like toothpaste or lotion or whatever it is. So that is really cool. There is so much going on. And I think that it's just one of those things that, and I mean, for myself as well, I have to be more intentional about going out and kind of finding those things sometimes, but they're not hard to find. They're there. I have to put them, you know, in kind of in the forefront. So
definitely. I also just want to name this because I think that, right, we can talk about all these incredible organizations and businesses and nonprofits that promote this, but I also want to name, right, Chattanooga does have this abundance of natural spaces that we can go out into. And something that I think is incredibly realistic for those of us that spend time in those places is to pack out what you pack in, right? Like, do not leave anything behind. Even at the parks that have trash cans where you can, you know, throw whatever away, don't throw your stuff in there. Bring it home with you, right? Because there are critters and animal friends that will climb into those trash cans and get full of human food and plastics and all sorts of things, right? And so even though the garbage can is there on the trail or at the park, my invitation is to bring it home with you. And if you see something laying on the trail, pick it up and bring that home with you too, right? Like these are really, really simple things for us to do that don't actually require anything other than our, you know, our own 2 feet and hands and just a little bit more awareness of what we can do to just be a little more intentional.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it just then, and it actually like that in itself is a mindfulness practice. I feel like, you know, we're just being more mindful of like what you're actually carrying with you. Like how are you carrying it with you and how are you then just disposing of it or like bringing it home or reusable packaging or whatever that looks like. But it's a really good thing. And a lot of what you've talked about today has been really doable for every person out there, which I think is so important because sometimes people think like, oh, I can't make a difference or, you know, it's too hard to do these things. And every single thing that you've talked about from, you know, taking the moments to reconnect or to, you know, you packed it in, so why not pack it out, right? You know, those things are so simple and doable for people. So I think it's important to remind people that, yeah, we can all do our part, like a little bit, just little piece by little piece. Again, 1% better at a time, and that adds up exponentially. It exponentially adds up.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's amazing what happens when we put a little bit more intention into our lives and our way of being. And yeah, I think that's always going to be my goal, is like, how can these things be accessible? Because of course, some of the stuff that I do in my practice is a little edgier, right? But that's like, once we get comfortable with it, and once we sink a little bit deeper into, this way of being. But yeah, we can all do our part, and it's sweet when you see it happening.
Definitely. Well, this has been really amazing. I want to say, like, so if I want to ask you one last thing is like, is there anything that we didn't kind of talk about that you think you wish people knew more about, or like really understood, or anything that you know, want to make sure people kind of go home with today to really know about, whether it's ecotherapy or therapy or their own selves, or anything that you find is the kind of drive home point?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful that you asked this, because I realized about halfway through, I was like, oh man, I always talk about this, and I failed to mention it at the start of our time together. So I really just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge that Chattanooga sits on the unceded ancestral territory of the Yuki and the Muskogee people. These were the First Nations folks that called this land home way before the colonists came in, and even before the Cherokee came in. And so I always want to just acknowledge that this land was loved and stewarded, and in the home of the indigenous folks that were here first. And the fact that we get to wander in the mountains and play in the waterways, and call this beautiful, beautiful land home, is because of the tens of thousands of years that it was stewarded by the people who were here first. And so always want to acknowledge that. And of course, want to acknowledge some of the heinous history that exists here in Chattanooga, and making sure that we don't just sweep those things under the rug. And so there's just I think an importance in knowing that there's two sides to every coin, and both deserve acknowledgement, so that we can continue to move forward in our lives really mindfully and intentionally.
Yeah. And it's interesting that kind of came up, because literally today I was having a conversation I had a one-on-one meeting with another therapist, actually. And she was talking about how she's really been thinking about this more and more, is that like the native people who were here before us, and kind of like we talked about before, with like kind of earth being sick. And it's not just earth, but there's also all of this kind of pain that's in the land as well. And she had done some like land cleansing things as well. As it was interesting what she was kind of talking about. But it's funny that you bring that up, just because I literally talked about it earlier today with somebody else. But it is something that we take for granted a lot of times, and we forget that where we stand today, like people have walked for thousands of years before us, and to really acknowledge that, and their life's and purpose and journey, and all of that, and alongside the land that we live on, is super, super important. So
very synchronicitous that had come up previously for you today with another therapist, nonetheless.
I know, right? It's kind of a funny thing, but yeah. So I know that you have a resource that you've provided. So I'm going to link that. Do you want to give just like a mini kind of tell of kind of what that is, or who might find it the most useful?
Yeah. So the resource that I'd come up with is actually it focuses on Joanna Macy's framework, the work that reconnects, and this is really it's a non-clinical framework, which is what I really like about it. It's super accessible, and it focuses a lot on how we, the layman, can take action towards being in relationship with Earth and all of life that exists here, and moving towards a a healthier, a cleaner, a greener, and a more life-sustaining future. And so she has this wonderful podcast with a young woman named Jess Sarante. And Joanna Macy actually just passed a couple of months ago. So she's been doing really, really powerful, meaningful environmental work for decades and decades, and is a huge inspiration in some of the practices that I bring into Waves Wellness. And so it's really sweet. It is for everybody, but especially for those people who are really curious about like, what can I do? Right? That question of like, I'm just one person. What can I do? Or even those who feel hopeless or feel the heaviness and the pain that is happening in this modern era that we find ourselves in. There's the spiral is really kind of the framework itself. And there's lots of really great information about ways that you can sink into some of this work and ways that you can find community around it, so that you can, really feel like you're taking action and moving forward when it comes to caring for self, caring for humans, caring for more than humans, and moving towards a healthier future for all of life.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love it. I'm excited to go through it myself.
Yeah.
And so if people are curious about, where to find you, how to work with you, all of that, like where should they go to kind of link up?
Yeah, so you can visit any of my social media spaces. So my website, which we could also link, I'm sure, is very simply www.waveswellnessandcounseling.com. I am also on Instagram at Waves Wellness and Counseling. And my phone number and my email are posted on both of those sites. And so you could also very truly just text me or send me an email if you're interested in chatting more about the work that I'm doing. I've got some really cool workshops that I do every month, and some really cool community spaces too. So even if it's I don't know about ecotherapy, but I'd really like to talk about it or be in a community space, then I've got all of that stuff that's posted up there too.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm really excited. And so yeah, for everybody also, if you would like to meet Jenna in person, one, you can just literally go meet her, but also she will be talking in January on the panel for the Human Health Collective, which is the in-person event that I run here in Chattanooga, connecting health professionals, wellness professionals, and the public to come alongside and learn and connect and create more community around all things health and wellness. So we're going to be talking about mental health, and Jenna will be on that panel. So come with your questions if you want to come out and learn a little bit more. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. And then on my side of things, I'll just say I'm going to be doing these weekly lives. I'm going to take a break for Christmas time, but we'll be back in January. And so I'm really excited to keep having conversations like this, and just bringing other people into this community and continue to learn from them and really have those experts share their knowledge and experiences with everybody here. So I am and I'm excited to keep on learning. But everybody, I hope you have a wonderful holiday and the rest of December. Stay warm, and we will chat later. All right. Bye.
Bye.